Yes, I do. And we'll wait for people to come. I wonder if the live stream chat shows us how many people. Oh, look at that. 3 out of 3. It shows 3 out of 3 streams over there. That's pretty cool.
Huh.
Oh, it will show viewers. I wonder if that's cool.
Hey, you're live now.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That's
Birdie.
pretty cool. Go ahead and share it out on Twitter, Facebook. And if anybody's hopping in and watching us make fools of ourselves, please share and let other people come in and make fun of us and berate us mercilessly. It's my favorite thing of the night. All right, cool. This is neat. Very cool. So we can shut down these because we don't need those extra screens. I like this. Yes, this is live. Mr. J. Buchamp 93. This is live going out right now. So bear with us as we wait for people to roll in and we get this party started. We're trying something new here. We tried it last week and my computer crashed. I fixed a few things, so maybe this week it'll be a little bit better.
I think it's still the government.
Yeah, it's definitely the government.
You can't say American flag and white hood in the same sentence and then have the plug pulled.
Oh,
Sorry.
is that actually what happened?
Yeah.
Oh, no shit. I didn't watch to the end. I didn't know what was said at the very. Oh, so it probably was government intervention. So yeah, and yeah, so just let us make sure we don't say those things.
Apparently, you can't joke around anymore.
Yeah,
at all.
yeah, we don't want to shut things down.
I mean, Jesus. I can't even say Jesus. If I say
yeah,
that,
don't say Jesus, and definitely don't
piss
say
off the Baptists.
Yeah, don't say Jesus with MAGA and hallelujah. Don't say all those together in the same sentence because you'll get shadow banned from Twitter.
Or we can just sit here in silence for the next hour and not offend anybody. Well, probably the monks.
Yeah,
but.
the monks will be offended because we're cultural appropriation. Those sensitive bastards.
Welcome to society 101.
Hey, look, our professional phobismus skills are coming out again.
I'm telling you, they are.
All right, so let's get this party started, y'all.
All right, let's do it.
All right, so last week we were interrupted with technical difficulties, and we didn't get to finish out a few of our topics. So we'll pick up from where we left off and carry the torch further forward. This week, my recent abortion article has been published, and people are losing their minds. Plus, 7 signs you're in a toxic relationship and how to make sure you aren't the one who's toxic. All that and more tonight on the Unframe of Mind Show.
You're listening to the Unframe of Mind Show, the place to have the most mind-stretching, unprotected, intellectual intercourse of your life. Your host, Daniel Wagner, battles the forces of evil by lobbing fiery balls of truth, reason, and evidence over safe room walls.
All right. And welcome back to the Unframed Mind Show, where we have uncomfortable conversations without a condom. I'm your host, Daniel Wagner.
And co-host Anthony Trewick.
And we're going to just roll right into it because we got a lot to cover. First off, we had a recent article come out that's been pissing off everybody in all the right ways. It's let's see. It's called How to Be Pro-Choice and Pro-Life. And just based on the title, you have no idea where I'm coming from on this. And just based on the title, I've had a number of people decide that they want to get offended about it. Telling me, oh, you can't be pro-choice and pro-life. I'm like, well, dude, read the article and you understand where I'm coming from. But that's not exactly the case here. This guy did take the time to read the article. I wanted to go over one in particular comment thread that was brought up about this. So I'll just roll right into this. The guy says, disingenuous headline. Well, again, you read the article, man, so you would know it's a very genuous headline.
Yeah.
I don't know that's a word. It's a very genuous headline.
It is tonight.
It's a word tonight. And then the very second sentence he says, posted by a male. In all caps. And I find that interesting because I keep hearing these identity politic things come up and people are like, well, if you're a male, you can't say anything about a woman's right to choose. You can't talk about women's rights and everything else. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I don't have to be bloody to see everyone else's pain, you know?
Right.
You don't actually have to have experienced everything the other person has experienced to be able to have a logical explanation or a logical thought on something.
Well, and I'm actually, and you and I had talked about this last week. I'm in the process of actually writing a follow-up, I guess you would say, article to this, talking about the stance of what it's like to be the male in a situation of if a woman decides to have an abortion, do I have a say in it? Do I have a say in this at all? If I am with someone, and speaking from personal experience, if that woman, my wife, girlfriend, whatever, decides that, hey, I'm not ready to be a mom, but I'm ready to be a father, what's going to happen here?
Well, I actually heard somebody say, well, once you release that seed into the woman, you done gave up your rights and responsibilities. And I'm
no, I still have to maintain that right as a father to take care of that child.
Right,
once it's
yeah.
born.
If she decides to keep it, well, all of a sudden you're still responsible for it. But if she decides not to keep it, well, you're no longer responsible once you've like the logic doesn't quite play out. It doesn't make sense.
Right.
And it's just funny just to hear people say, well, it's posted by a male, as if that was some kind of an argument against me writing this article. And for those of you who don't know and haven't had a chance to read it, oh, shit, James Fox Higgins is offended. We need to cut this live stream down now. At any rate, yeah. For somebody to sit there and say, well, it's a male. He's a male. He can't say nothing. I'm like, that's dude. Just because I have a penis doesn't mean all of a sudden that my logic centers don't work. It's like logic doesn't work in certain areas for certain people based on their gender, sex, race, color, creed, religion, whatever the case may be. It's like this makes no logical sense. It's so much fun. So the first thing is that he says it's a bullshit anti-choice article, and I find that hilarious because I literally spent this article offering 50 different choices that you have up to the abortion.
Right.
Okay. You just pointing out basically, hey, while we're all arguing about this abortion problem, what about all the series of choices that led up to that moment?
Well,
that's all the article's about.
But I think the one thing that we're lacking here that I think a lot of people are missing from the very get-go, everybody's turned this into a political issue rather than it being a moral issue. You know, and that's what kind of bothers me. It's in some sense, it almost to me sounds like it's a little bit selfish. It's people want to take the political stance rather than the moral stance, and that's what kind of bothers me. But again, that's just my perspective on that. And it's not right or wrong. It's just I think that's where a lot of people are approaching this from.
Right. Well, again, I just find it funny that he writes the words bullshit anti-choice article, completely ignoring the fact that I just literally listed off 50 choices that one can make. Like, this is not an anti-choice article by any means. So, shit. James says, hashtag shut it down. Until your penis identifies as an inverted vagina, you have no right to comment on women's issues. Yeah, me and my brother used to wonder about that as if, like, seriously, we used to really think that women were just men, where they just said,
it just went the other way.
Like they got a vacuum, leak that just pulls everything in.
But I think what I've recently found, I had posted something on social media about my stance on being pro-life, and because I didn't word it in such a way or better explain myself, it created a bit of a shitstorm. Yeah. So what I've learned is when it comes to abortion, you almost have to be very thorough from where you come from, because a lot of what you can say, a lot of what you put out there in the social media world can be misconstrued.
Well, I've learned not to worry. I've learned not to worry about that as much.
I'm not, but you want to present your case and your statistics and your facts and get your point across to where you're coming from without sounding like a complete and evil monster.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for me, that whole post went south quick. But then I started to realize that people who knew me knew where I was coming from. People who don't necessarily know me as I thought they do took it in a completely different realm, which is fine. I mean, you're entitled to your opinion and to see it in a different stance. My problem is, and when I kind of look back at that whole situation of what I posted, we are so driven. We've talked about this many times on the show, and a lot of people are so emotionally driven by something they don't agree with, they don't apply the 10-second rule. You apply the 3-second rule and instantly you're pissed off. You apply the 10-second rule, you start to compose yourself, you calm down, your heart rate kind of slows down, and you're like, okay, well, what did he mean by that? So rather than posting your emotional, stances and points, okay, Anthony, what did you mean by that?
You're moving into some dangerous territory there, telling people they should stop and think about what somebody might have. That I should actually stop and say and consider what you might have meant by something.
Well, it just you have to look past certain things, and that is something I've tried to do when it comes to social media. Is that you really have to step back assess of what somebody has said and then move forward with what you're going to go from there. So, it just depends on the person, and it really kind of shows the society in which we are now a part of.
Right.
And it's an emotional society because these topics are such a hot topic, and everybody is emotionally driven by them. That's why I said this has been more of a political atmosphere when it comes to abortions rather than a moral sense or stance that needs to be approached with.
Yeah.
So
Dan, our friend Dan says, "Throw schmurro, just throw out an opinion and embrace the chaos." That's kind of my that's kind of my thing. I mean, I'm going to do the best I can to explain what I'm going to say, and I'm going to write it in a entertaining way as best I can. I like to use like the dark, sarcastic humor. You've read the article, you understand where I'm coming from. It's all very dark humor, very blue collar type language. It's not meant for the highly Christian style audience that's very sensitive to curse words and somebody even said I should take out all the whore language. I'm like, well, that's just the way I talk. If you want to read my articles, you're going to read them the way I talk. But if I sit there and try to think about every possible objection and try to target each one, man, that would become a book quicker than nobody's business. And people are coming into that. Like clearly with this guy's comment. You're going to see as I continue on, he already had his mind made up before he even went into the article. I mean, you could tell just by the second line written in all caps, posted by a male. You already know where he's coming from. Like, this guy has zero nuanced thought. Okay, so James is now offended. Again, I can't win with this guy. Son of a bitch.
What time is it over there, by the way?
and Ed here, he says, I say what I want when I want. You know what? Ask Daniel. Yeah, he does say what he wants when he wants. And I think we need more people like that are like, you know what? Cut the bullshit. Let's just say what's on our mind. If you can't handle it, that's your problem.
Well, I
think like a Boston type attitude. Fuck you. No, fuck you.
I think the other issue too is that when I did post what I posted, it was out of sense of concern. I don't care about necessarily the woman that is pregnant. I don't care about who the father is.
They're going to take that clip out of context. I didn't care about the woman.
But let me finish.
That's how they're going to play it.
But what I'm saying is I am defending a child that has no voice. I am defending an unborn that cannot feel the pain that we do. That child is in a womb which the barriers of sound do not travel for us to hear. So for me, that's what I want to protect is the child that has no voice. That's what's important to me. And being in the situations that I've been, that is part of the reasons why I'm pro-life. And the heartbeat, like I said, it's a moral thing, man. And I cannot put myself into ever thinking that it's okay to abort a child, even if it's for a convenience factor, which statistics show that's what a lot of women do get abortions for. It's because they don't want to interfere with their career, with their finances. Yeah, I'm sorry. I want to be a voice for the unborn that can't say anything, that can't show the pain.
Basically, I made a mistake, or it's not even I made a mistake. It's more like this happened to me.
Right.
It's almost they go into it with this attitude. This happened to me. It's not. That's not. I made a very distinct set of choices that led to this very moment. It's almost like I'm a leaf in the wind. This thing happened to me. There was nothing I can do. Of course, I need an abortion. Of course, it's like the logical next conclusion for them. It's like, let me go on, or we'll never get done because we're not even. So he says, everyone read to the end. There's nothing pro-choice about this, in quotes, which, like we covered, is because the entire thing is the choices you could have made. So especially the utter garbage of the last two paragraphs. Seriously? Again, seriously is in all caps, as if that's an argument to something. So just real quick, I'm sure not everybody's going to read this. It's short, so I'll read it. Last two paragraphs says, if you were offended by any of the above choices or the accompanying commentary, perhaps you need to ask yourself which is the more offensive crime. Some guy on the internet writing a snarky pro-choice article, or dismembering a perfectly healthy and viable baby moments before birth and claiming that pro-lifers are trying to deny you your choice to do so. I agree with the idea that it's your body and it is your choice, but as soon as you've entered the realm of abortion, it's no longer your body or your choice. You forfeited the right the moment you chose incorrectly in any of the above potential choices. So that's kind of the direction that I went with it, and he wasn't happy about it. But he goes on. He says, He says, I'm not even going to waste my time destroying the misogynistic trash talk aspect of this post, nor the sheer idiocy of the bulk of it, especially numbers 1, 2, especially numbers 1, 2, 4, 6, 9, 12, 13, 14, 15, 22, 31, 35, 37. Oh, fuck, the whole article is just an anti-woman rant by a pig of a man. Like, give me the short list, man.
No,
just count out the ones you weren't offended by.
I think what people need to understand is that we're not anti-women. We believe in the sanctity of protecting the unborn. We believe in human life. We believe in, children having a chance, and that's at least my stance on that. Now, given the situation and the atmosphere that we're in with this topic, there are a multitude of reasons why people may have to have an abortion. For medical reasons, we understand that. That is a thought process that you have to be almost subconsciously, you know the rights between difference and wrongs, before you set out to do something. If you're just going to walk into an abortion clinic because, you don't want it to interfere with your school, your finances, and, you're concerned about what you're going to do next, you should have made a smarter decision before you decided to lay down with somebody and conduct that act. Now, if it's a medical situation, then yeah, obviously the parameters are now different. We understand. I mean, and again, it's a moral thing, and that's kind of the stance of where I'm at here. The percentages of, there being an issue where the pregnancy has gone wrong, isn't as high as what it is when it comes to half the women that show up to abortion clinics that show it for all the wrong reasons. And I have a real serious issue with that. As a man, I have a right to say that,
Yeah, I've heard a lot. I've heard a number of people that work in the industry. Can you grab that light before it falls? It looks like it's about to, the clamp looks like it's about to give out. Anyway, there's a number of women that work in the industry, that work as nurses and that kind of thing, that have said, hey, we've been doing this for 25 plus years. This whole scenario of it's going to be either the mother or the child, or we got to kill one or the other. That's literally never come up. That's just not a thing that happens. So he goes on. He starts numbering. He's got number 1. He writes, dismembering a perfectly healthy and viable baby moments before birth. Utter bullshit, because that never happens, in all caps. And it is utter lie used by white Sharia trad life asshat anti-choice creeps to push their false narrative. Now, let me just point out that adjectives are not an argument, okay? Ad hominems are not an argument. I mean, if all you're going to do is attack me and call me names like white Sharia asshat and anti-choice creep, like that doesn't mean anything. That's just you getting angry and spouting off words. He hasn't actually countered it. I don't want to spend too long delivering each point. I just want to keep. I'm only this far in. I got a lot.
Holy shit.
Yeah, that's all the farther we made it. He's just so full of shit. So then he points out. Then he writes, as soon as you enter the realm of abortion, it's no longer your body or your choice. You forfeited that right. And then he says in all caps, as if it's a counter argument, more utter bullshit. He doesn't say anything else. That's not an argument. Again, like, dude, like, okay, so if I'm wrong, tell me where I'm wrong. Let's settle that. Yeah. But just calling it bullshit doesn't. I mean, for people that are looking at your comment, they might look at that and go, yeah, I agree. But you haven't actually countered anything. All you've done is said the words bullshit, as if that's some kind of magical spell that just makes everything I said before that go away.
Well, go ahead.
So an embryo is not a human being deserving rights, and definitely does not have rights that exceed the woman's, period. Like, I didn't say any of that. That wasn't even part of the article. So then this next one, in all caps, it is very clear that you believe a pregnant woman has no rights over her own body. Again, where did I say that? Like, it wasn't in the article.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't there. It was just pointing out, look, you have a lot more control over your choices than people seem to think they do. It's like this whole story, this story didn't just suddenly happen with a snap of a fingers, where you're laying on a table with some forceps at your vagina and somebody's getting ready to go in. That's not how this happened. There was a series of events. That's all I'm pointing out. It had nothing to do with women's rights, babies' rights, nothing. And he says, well, buddy, that is about the most non-libertarian thing you can believe. What, giving people the responsibility of their own choice and individuality? I'm pretty sure that's spot on.
Yeah.
Libertarian, I would believe. So then he goes on. A, an egg is not a baby. B, a zygote is not a baby. Okay, I'll agree that an egg is not a baby because it has to be fertilized in order to start moving toward that process. Is that fair so far?
Fair.
So the one thing he said that's correct in this entire thing is an egg is not a baby. Again, that wasn't even part of my argument, but I don't know why he's addressing this. So he says a zygote is not a baby. C, an embryo is not a baby. D, a fetus is not a baby. E, after birth, a baby is a baby. So only after it actually
birth comes out that it's now
after it has actually left the building, now you're a baby. Like this is the utter bullshit they do. They just try to sit there and create all these little words that somehow change what it actually is. Yeah, it's going to be a baby. Like we know how this movie plays out, right?
Yeah, I don't know, man. This kind of falls in the parameters of people that are emotionally driven by something they don't agree with, rather than taking the time to talk about the issues at hand. They choose not to. So, no, an egg is breakfast.
So, real quick visit to the comments here. Dan says, probably told y'all before, but my brother's ex had an abortion and then told him 6 months later. She did it to continue pursuing her dead-end music career. It destroyed him. Oh, that's
exactly what I'm talking about.
That's
and
gross.
That's
like,
where
didn't
I do,
even like. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to bring it up to the person and say, "Hey, listen, I'm thinking about having an abortion here," and at least give the guy a chance to have a say, give him a chance to make an argument, maybe try to convince you not, but just to go behind his back and say, I'm doing this. Anyway,
Yeah.
and then Ed says, no, an egg is breakfast. I don't know. I've never tried human egg in reference to this, but
Not say that I will anytime soon.
maybe
but
it might be a thing. You might need a few thousand of them to make a good hearty breakfast.
Good omelet.
But then again, anyway. So the part of a human that makes us most human is the prefrontal cortex, and that doesn't even begin forming until we're well into the third trimester. In fact, it takes nearly 2 years after birth before it's functioning like a human and continues to develop until age 25. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but it almost feels like he's setting up this argument to suggest that until you're 25, you're not even fully human because your prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed. Is that what
Wow. That's kind of the way it comes across.
It's like, it's not, yeah, your prefrontal cortex is what makes us most human, right? And that doesn't even begin forming until well into the third trimester. Okay, that might be true. But if that's what, that's, like, if you follow that to its logical conclusion, you're setting up a scenario where abortions could ideally happen until you're 24, 25 years old. Like, that makes no sense, right?
No.
It makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
All right. So, Michael says, but these same people will argue if a pregnant woman gets shot and killed, it's double murder. Yes, that's true.
Is that the only time it's acceptable
just like
to claim that that's a human?
Another comment, just like caviar, human eggs. I've never had caviar either. We're gonna have to get caviar and human eggs on a blindfold taste test and see if that's gross.
I got a feeling we're only going to
gross.
get a few minutes into this one, and then it's going to cut our feed again, and we're screwed.
No. Check this out. Let me show you this. This is cool. I know I fixed it now because look, my computer is only running at 60%, 54%, 52%. Like, it's not. Yeah, I think we fixed it.
So let me ask you something.
Because last week it was running like maxed out, and then when I tried to play some videos, that it was during that Dr. Jordan Peterson video I played that it just said nope.
I went back and watched that whole interview. That was actually pretty good. I liked that.
Oh, it was a fantastic interview.
Yeah,
if you saw that last little bit from our last live stream with Dr. Jordan Peterson, the whole interview was fantastic.
You ought to see the one that he did with Ben Shapiro.
I probably have.
Yeah, it was like 2 hours long. It was really good.
Yeah, every time that got, I like to listen to what he has to say. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with everything he has to say, but there's a lot of what he says that like makes sense, and it's like just taking things logical step by step. Oh, okay, that makes sense. I can apply that to my life and maybe have small improvements here and there, or maybe even large ones. Who knows? So let me finish this up, and then we'll move on to the next subject. So he says, trying to claim that disposing of a small lump of prenatal cells is, quote, killing a baby, unquote, is simply an outright lie and deserves no respect. Well, I don't know about you, but in the realm of making arguments and putting forth, counter arguments, I don't think respect plays into that at all. It doesn't matter if you respect me. I could give a shit if you respect me. Obviously, you don't respect anyone the way you talk on the internet. Good God. And the way you type. Good God, you definitely don't respect the grammar Nazis at all. I've been doing some editorializing a little bit in this just to skip past the typos and the terrible, it's like fat finger mashing. I'm angry at you right now, and I don't care if I misspell the word the. Anyway, this automatically invalidates your, quote, woman has no rights premise. Again, was never one of my premises. Never said that. No, I do not support murder of human beings, but a being means a conscious entity, and a prenatal lump of cells does not qualify. Sounds like if we're arguing that you're not a human being if you are an unconscious entity, incapable of thinking. This guy here, not human. So let's move on to the next subject. All right.
So let me ask you something. The people in your life, do they like to color?
Oh, yes. So...
yeah, I mean, you got to love the color.
So we've got this fancy box. You're going to have to hold a little closer to the camera so we see it. Again, we've been doing this the last few weeks. We've got these offensive crayons. We've been having fun pulling them out. Last week we showed a couple images of some fan art that was made with the colors. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull 3 offensive crayons from this week, and your task is to create a piece of art and submit it to unframeofmind@gmail.com.
What you got?
All right.
Tell us what you got.
And we will present those images for next week's show. Anyway, this one here is called Statutory Grape.
Wow. Kind of falls right into the end of that segment, doesn't it?
That could not have been a more perfect crayon. Statutory Grape. If you haven't been offended yet, probably are now. And I'm okay with that.
So we're moving into a different direction with tonight's show, okay? You had hit me up on our little chat group that we have, and kind of discussed the topics of what we're going to do for the next live show. And something I kind of did a video on about 2 weeks ago when it comes to change and talking about relationships and this, that, and the other. So you wanted to discuss, how do we know that we have toxic people in our lives, and some of the signs that we have those individuals that I guess kind of live amongst us. So what are your thoughts on the podcast that you sent to me and what you got out of that?
Okay, so there's an excellent podcast from the guys at The Art of Charm. It's episode number 748, and they talked about the same things we're going to talk about tonight. We're just kind of giving our take on those. I love listening to this podcast because they do give a lot of fantastic advice about, basically building relationships, whether it's a personal relationship or a business relationship, and trying to build out your network, and basically just being a better human overall. I love the show. I kind of miss the original host of the show, but these two guys do a pretty good job as well. At any rate, the episode was about 7 signs of toxic relationships, and I went ahead and jotted down what those 7 signs were, and we'll take them one at a time here and just kind of give our own take on them.
Right.
And just see if, maybe if you listen to this and you're thinking of some people in your life that could fall into these different definitions, these different categories, maybe it's time to consider moving away from that person or trying to replace them with people of higher quality. Or if all of this sounds like total, like this makes no sense, maybe it's possible you're the one that's the toxic person, and maybe there's some things that we can do to help you out. So number 1 was a sign of somebody who's toxic is somebody who tries to control you.
Yeah.
They're constantly, they're constantly trying to make you do certain things or manipulate you into doing certain things. And that usually shows up a lot when people feel like they don't have control over their own lives. So they try to make it where they control everybody else.
Right.
Which, if anybody who's healthy understands, trying to control other people is impossible.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get away with it a little bit, especially with people who are a little more weak-willed and more given to being more giving, more what's the word I'm looking for? Accommodating.
Right.
You got people that will, they'll bend over backwards to try to make you happy, and it's manipulative. It's wrong.
And I've always thought that manipulation, and when it comes to this particular subject, I think a lot of it isn't really so much control at the beginning. I think maybe a lot of it is trusting in each other And then I think over time it develops into control, meaning that when you first enter a relationship and then you kind of move along into, getting engaged, and then you're talking about finances, you're talking about joint accounts, and, whether it's your cell phone, bank account, whatever it might be, you're trusting each other to do the right thing with your personal finances and this, that, and the other. And I think over time, it's almost as if it's a power struggle, one over the other, that seems to want that control.
Yeah.
Or at least that's been my experience in my previous marriage. That was kind of what happened. It was we entered into that where, we felt like, the joint account was the best thing to have, and the cell phones and this, that, and the other. And then all of a sudden it turned into, well, hey, why did you go out and buy that? And I'm like, well, what does it really matter? Mm-hmm. I'm not going over and beyond the expenses of what we need to take care of when it comes to our bills. Why is this now becoming an issue? So I often wonder if it starts out as trusting each other, and then it kind of falls into parameters of somebody taking that control over the other.
Yeah, a couple of things on that. One of the things that they talk about all the time on The Art of Charm is about the stronger frame dissolves the weaker one. You know, so if you tend to be the one that's more stubborn and more forthcoming and more, much more assertive, and the other person tends to be the opposite of that, it's very easy to start overpowering that person. And it takes somebody of high quality to be able to stand back and go, and notice this and say, hey, listen, I've noticed that, you're kind of just giving into everything I say. Like, is everything okay? Is there something we can do to, make this feel more like an equal relationship? I think that the control aspect is a little more subtle. I guess what I'm picturing is like, if I'm the kind of person who has chaos in my life, I'm trying. I don't really have any interest in trying to fix myself. Mm-hmm. It's much easier to try to berate other people and try to manipulate them into conforming to my wants and my needs. It's a very narcissistic thing. Yeah. I don't know why I stumbled with that word. I've never stumbled with that word. At any rate, it's like I have no interest in fixing me, so we're gonna try to adjust everybody else around me to make up for that loss.
It never works.
Well, it does a little.
You can't conform that individual into something that obviously they're never going to be.
It eventually falls.
Content with that, but even then, you run into what's going to happen later on is a lot of resentment for it. Oh,
absolutely. So that's why I was saying it works for a little while, and then the weaker the person that's being controlled, it may take a while longer for that to bubble up. Maybe this weaker frame person doesn't quite understand how to set boundaries.
Right.
So somebody who's more controlling is going to recognize that. They're going to see, a wounded deer in the woods. Like, I'm going to notice that, and I'm going to notice that I can walk over you, and you're not going to do anything about it. Works for me. Now you're doing what I want.
So let me ask you this then. Do you think that when two parties go into a relationship, do you think that one has that in mind over the other, wanting to have that control? Or do you think over time that kind of develops? Kind of a dominating thing in the relationship.
I think it's a spectrum of things, man. I think there's a number of times when it is very overt and very on purpose. Like I want to control you. Like I've made it my mission to control you. It's very malicious.
Do you not think that maybe sometimes that you both go into it willingly and you're not really thinking about that? You're kind of doing what's best for the relationship or what makes sense.
I don't even know if it's a conscious thing. I really don't know for the most part. I think in most situations, it's kind of just like the dynamics of the relationship kind of play out that way.
Right.
And especially plays out even more predictably in situations where people don't have as much self-knowledge, mm-hmm. where they don't quite understand their motivations for doing and behaving and saying the things they do. And you know what I'm saying? Like you may like, for example, like I'm sure we've all heard this problem come up. If you don't do X, then you must not love me.
Yeah,
it's like, wait a minute, hold on. Like, if you don't have the self knowledge to realize and recognize what that is, that's a manipulative tactic of control. But it took me a while to recognize that. I was probably in my mid-20s before I started recognizing these little things and noticing what they were. It's because I was starting to develop self-knowledge and understanding why people do what they do. Why do I do what I do? And if you lack that, these things just kind of play out almost like dominoes. It's kind of sad. And it becomes these predictable movie tropes you see written in movies all the time. It's like they become that predictable and that it's that. It's just
And
that.
and my other thought too is on that is kind of pay attention when you enter the dating realm of wanting to know what's really going on with that individual, because I think once you start to look at that person and you get into certain situations as you're dating, you can see the early signs of someone who is toxic, and that is controlling. So you have to be kind of aware when you're going through that process, because the thing is I don't think everybody is going into a relationship wanting to be a toxic individual, wanting to be a controlling individual.
Right.
But there are situations where certain people are hardwired that way, meaning when you first starting dating off the bat, they're already controlling.
Yeah.
You're not going to mesh well with me.
Yeah, a lot of it, again, in the absence of self-knowledge, you tend to just repeat what you know, and you tend to model the type of relationships that you've been around. So if the person you're dating happens to be, it's really important to get to understand the parents' dynamic in their, what was it that they saw in their parents that they're now repeating?
Right.
Do they have enough self-awareness to be able to notice those poor behaviors and stop those before they become a big thing?
It kind of makes
Sometimes
you wonder.
you don't.
It kind of makes you wonder who is in their life as a support group of friends that are telling them, "Hey, have you ever noticed this about yourself? Have you ever noticed that you acted this way, or you may have treated somebody not such the best way, but if you continue down that path, there's something psychologically going on with you that's not clicking on all cylinders, telling you, hey, maybe I need to change before I get into any other kind of relationship
that's
later
super
on in
important.
life."
Super important. You can't see all your sides, man. You got to have that support group.
Yeah. You do.
Before I move on to number 2, let me hit the comment section here. Alex, thanks for joining us tonight. He says, my wife controls me. And Dan offers this advice. He says, give her a smack or two. Get her in line, bro. Alex says, great advice. Thanks. That's fantastic.
You got to love it.
We're so anti-woman here, man. I don't understand it. Like, what's wrong with us?
So what was number 2?
All right, number 2 is this is actually something I was in a conversation with a friend of mine today. It was somebody who is a toxic person tends to have a total disregard for boundaries.
Yeah.
They tend to be repeat offenders of these boundaries. Like if you do end up confronting them and saying, "Hey, here's my boundary. Here's the line. I don't like it when you cross this line. Please don't do that again."
When are we
They're the kind of person that's going to hear that and go, "Eh." They'll do it anyway.
What kind of boundaries are we talking about?
I'm talking about, hey, Mom, I don't like it when you try to tell me how to raise my kids. Mm-hmm. Mom then decides, oh, she don't really mean that. Boundaries. I'm going to go ahead and tell her how to raise her kids. I'm just going to keep doing it. That's just one example. You could set many boundaries. Like I have a particular boundary when it comes to circumcision. I just found this out last night in a conversation with my wife. I didn't realize how strongly I felt about it. But the long story short, my foot is stuck. Long story short, I think I decided, even if my kids decide to give their own children a circumcision, I am willing to die on that hill, and I will cut them out of my life. Like, that's how serious I am about this. That's because the stuff I researched, the stuff I've learned, the statistics do not support doing it. I mean, this is a contentious issue politically, but if I present you with the research that I saw, and I present you, and you don't even try to counter it, you just say, I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. In my mind, you're a fucking monster. That's disgusting. That's terrible. I'm sorry. That's not cool. Like, it's not cool.
So what other boundaries can you give example of?
Thank you for bringing me back on track. I didn't want to make the whole thing about that. Anyway, what other boundaries? I mean, like, for example, like, I know a lot of younger couples deal with this kind of thing where the parents will come over to their house and they'll just let themselves in whenever they want. And you're kind of like sitting here getting ready to, have a little fun on the couch, and Mom's just walking in. You're like, Mom, can you quit doing that?
So
Dad,
Mom's got a key to the house and comes over anytime they want to.
Can you call before you come over if you don't mind? And they continue to not do it. Somebody who's a quality person would, hear that, understand it.
Well, just to be clear with the audience, we're not talking about just relationships with our spouses. We're talking about friends, family.
Yeah. This could be
anybody
these are
in
just
general.
the media examples.
Just to kind of get it out there that we're talking more than just relationships.
Right. I'm just trying to come up with common tropes that tend to be pretty widely accepted as boundaries that are constantly crossed. It's like, well, okay, I've got a few things that I really don't like it when you do this, and the toxic person would say, okay, sure, whatever. I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
Because it's about me. I'm narcissistic. I don't care what you think. I hear you, but it doesn't mean anything to me. I'm going to do it anyway.
So how would you deal with the situation of, say, your parents being that way, crossing those boundaries?
Well, see, the thing.
How do you set your boundaries with them? Not to say that they're toxic individuals, and not that you or suggest that you have to get rid of them out of your life completely, but when you set those healthy boundaries, what would you do to make sure that they're followed through with?
I would almost go with like a 3-strike rule. Like,
Yeah.
okay, so listen, I've discovered this about myself. I don't like it when you do X. Can you please stop doing X? Okay. So we've had the conversation. We've laid the groundwork. They go ahead and do it again. And you're like, okay, listen. I've already had the conversation with you. I've already told you this. I don't like it when you do this. If you do it again, these are the consequences.
Right.
This is what's going to happen. I'm either going to cut you out of my life, or I'm going to do, whatever consequences you can come up with that seems like a, pretty fair consequence. And then the third time, if they continue to do it, they obviously don't have enough respect for you to listen to you. They're not going to, and if they're going to cross that boundary, who knows what other boundary they're going to cross and not give a shit. Like, they obviously have no interest in giving into your wishes or listening to you. Even, it has to be a reasonable boundary, obviously.
Right.
It can't be like, Mom, don't ever leave your front door again. Fuck, Mom, you left your front door again. How can you do that? Like, that's not a reasonable boundary to set. That you want something that's involving you. But I think a nice 3-strike rule would be, enough of a fair warning to the person. It gives a nice set of steps to set up a consequence if the person doesn't comply, and then follow through. But the key is you have to follow through with whatever you say you're going to follow through.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what's going to end up happening is
The cycle's going to repeat itself.
the cycle will continue to repeat itself.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
it'll never stop, and that's a big problem. So
All right. So
I think Dan's on a bit of a
yeah,
comment spree tonight.
Dan is having a fantastic time with us tonight. That's awesome. So Ed says, I've learned to just stop listening and blank everyone out. That works till someone gets in trouble or needs help, which is mostly in the form of money. So all of a sudden you got like this mysterious person appearing out of the ether with a handout for money, and you're like, oh, have you been there the whole time? You need money?
It's the divine of intervention coming your way.
That's amazing. That's like, I gotta give credit. If you can actually have that skill, that's like being able to block out 4 children that are screaming in the background and then not even somebody's dying. Huh? What?
So let me ask you.
You're
Okay, so if it does come to your folks and they are crossing those boundaries, then what do you do? How do you approach that? How do you delegate what to do next once you imply the 3-strike rule when it comes to those boundaries? What do you do then?
Like if you've set the boundaries,
If you set the boundaries,
you
I mean,
have vocalized the consequences, they continue to violate.
yep.
What do you do? Well, whatever like I said, whatever the consequence is that you set for that, you got to be willing to follow through with it. So obviously,
Right.
don't set a consequence that you're not willing to follow through with.
But do you think that it ought to be pretty extreme or kind of mild? Or
It
just
depends on the situation.
Yeah.
Depends on the person, situation.
And the only reason why I say that is because in my previous marriage, my ex-wife, her mom lived out in Arizona, and she would have this tendency of planning her mother to come stay, not for weeks at a time, but for months at a time.
Oh.
And I there was never a say on my end as far as whether she was going to come or not, because I was in a position where I'm not going to just tell my wife at the time that no, her mom can't come stay.
Yeah.
And so I try to approach it from a different standpoint of saying, hey, why doesn't she just come out for a couple of weeks this time, rather than staying for 3 months? I mean, that's a little bit, to me, it's crossing a boundary because this is my home. You've now taken upon it yourself to cross this boundary
so it's your home. She invites her mom over. Was the boundary ever like established? Like,
it was.
You said, "Hey, listen, I don't mind if your mom comes out, maybe for a couple weeks, but not
for
months." And what
Correct.
what was her response to that?
And there wasn't really much of a response to it.
She just went ahead
she went ahead and did it anyway.
Did it anyway.
And actually, the way that I found out was I was on my way home from work, and she sent me a text and said, "Hey, my mom's coming out next week."
Yeah.
And then when I got to the house, I asked her. I said, "Well, how long is she staying this time?" And she said, "For 3 months." And I said, "Well, we've already had this conversation. She was supposed to only stay for a couple of weeks this time." And I'm like, well, she didn't really have much to follow up except for excuse after excuse. And I'm like, that's not what we originally had discussed.
Yeah.
So now that you've taken upon yourself to do this, this has now created a problem for us.
So, yeah, based on what I was saying before, that would be the time to then say, listen, we'll deal with it this time. She's already here. Or, I mean, this isn't the only way to deal with it, obviously. You could have said, hey, mother-in-law, or whatever, you got to go.
Well,
I can't.
But you don't want to.
That would be the time to set the consequence. Like, listen, I'm not going to keep dealing with this. And the least you could have done is talk to me first. The least you could have done is said something to me and give me a say in this.
But that all falls back to not rule number one, but subject line number one, control. She wanted to control the situation. She did it without talking to me, and she did it herself. Yep. She took it upon herself to do that. And so what happened is when all this went down, I told her, I said, the next time she comes out without you discussing this with me, I'm leaving the house. I'm not going to come back. Yep. Meaning while her mom was staying. I said, I'm not doing that. You're disrupting my life, the kids' lives. We have things that go on. I said, I have no problem with her staying here, but it's the fact that you took it upon yourself to do this without discussing it with me is what I have the problem with. And she was just like, well, she wanted to come out here for more than, a couple of weeks. Well, then we still need to discuss it. You just can't arbitrarily take it upon yourself to plan something like that. If my folks come into town, we're going to have a discussion about it before they get here.
Just a total disregard for any kind of boundaries.
Yeah. It's just you have to have communication.
Even as just common sense should dictate that this isn't even my home. I'm inviting my mom over. Was it her home? You were just dating at the time?
No, we were married.
Sorry,
this
you
was
were
a
married.
house that we had built in Mount Juliet.
Oh, so it was both of your house.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I missed a step. I thought for some reason it was your home that she was bringing. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it is her home too. So she, right. I guess that she's not really crossing that boundary. I mean, it is.
Well, no, the boundary was we had discussed it beforehand.
Right. The boundary would have been the communication factor here.
Right.
Like, hey, I guess that's why she's your ex.
Well, more to it.
More of the same type of thing.
And kind of going back to the whole manipulation and controlling thing, this was part of the reasons why we ended up getting divorced was the simple fact that, she needed to know where I was at, what I was doing, constantly texting me, and I'll never forget it. And I love telling the story because it was just so, outlawish to do, I guess you can say.
Oh, you rebel.
I was in the middle of mowing grass, okay? And usually it takes me about an hour and 45 minutes to do yard work. I love doing yard work. It's just throw on my headphones.
Come over to my house and do mine.
I just throw on my headphones and just go at it, man. There's something about, doing yard work.
It's like your meditative state.
It's almost like I got a little bit of Mexican in me, It's great. So, I love doing yard work. And I throw on my headphones and I cut the grass, we did whatever. So I get off about halfway through. I know I have to fill up the mower because we had a big yard. And as I'm going inside to get a glass of ice water, I check my phone. I've got 11 missed text messages, 14 missed phone calls. She was wanting to know where I was at, what I was doing, why I wasn't responding, all this other shit. You know what I did? I literally did not finish mowing the grass. I went in. I didn't even get a shower. I was tracking like grass all through the carpet and everything else through the house. I went in, packed a bag, small bag, and left. I left.
Oh, that's something else.
It's just you get to that breaking point, dude, where it's just like, oh my, I can't even mow my grass without somebody suggesting or wanting to know where I was at, what I was doing, and why I'm not answering my phone. That's toxic, dude. That is like, that's seriously some fucked up shit.
So let's hit the comments. Dan says, when deciding to embrace toxic masculinity, practice on a plushie or pillow for a bit. Really need to develop your pimp hand before using it in a game day situation. I love people. Oh, I love people so much. So Dan,
that was good.
He then says, shouldn't you have taken more responsibility in controlling the situation? Tell the mother no yourself. If the wife wants her there and can't or won't tell her mom no, and it's your rule, shouldn't you enforce it?
Well, that's a good
question. I mean, I know what I would say to that.
Well, because there was kids in the equation, I kind of have that soft spot to where, they don't get to see their grandmother, and it's just, I'm not trying to supplement the right from the wrong here. It's just she put me in that situation of where she knew how to pull this off. And I didn't like that. She used the whole guilt trip of wanting to say, okay, well, the kids don't get to see their grandmother. And
what I'm imagining too is she learned that behavior from somewhere, and I would be
it's
almost
manipulation.
willing to bet it. She learned that shit from her mom, and her mom's on the other end of the phone going, well, I don't ever hardly, 2 weeks ain't enough time to come see my grandkids.
Everybody's manipulating everybody.
So then she learns that behavior. It's hard-coded, hardwired into her. So all she knows how to do is to go ahead and pass that forward.
Yeah.
Anyway, Alexis, hey, welcome to the show, Miss Alexis. Thanks for joining us. She says, or tell her to stay in a hotel that she's more than welcome to visit, but she can't stay there.
Yeah, but that was only when we were talking about a couple of weeks, not months.
Yeah, and then but then Grandma's like, but I don't I live on a fixed income. I really can't afford it. I want to be able to buy things for the grandkids.
I even suggested moving her out here from Arizona, and I would put her into a home. Okay, that didn't sound right.
That did not sound right.
Into a home, but I would get her a home, and that's what we ended up doing. Was I moved her out here. Mm-hmm. I paid for a place for her to live in, not a retirement community or anything like that. Just bought her a house. So at that time, we had several homes. We were heavily invested in real estate and had all this property and everything else. And I was like, all right, well, let's just do this. Let's get her a home. She's going to be close to the family. We don't have to keep doing it. So I felt like by doing that, it ruled out the fact that she was going to have to stay with us, which it did. Thank God.
Well, we're going to have to move on or we'll never finish this. It's almost 8 o'clock now.
Yeah.
All right, so number 3, always taking and not giving. That's another sign of a toxic personality, somebody that's always taking and never giving. They're the kind of person who, say you go for a round of drinks at the bar, and he's the one guy that's never paying for the drinks. He's the one guy that's
He'll drink the hell out of that bucket of beer, but he'll never offer to pay for it.
He'll never be the one to jump in. Oh, I'll get you next time, but he never does. He never gets you next time. He's always ready to receive, but he's never ready to give.
Right.
It's like being in a relationship where you're constantly eating pussy. You're just doing it. You love doing it, and you want to do it every time, but she never reciprocates with a good blowjob every now and again.
Right.
It's like that's the kind of thing we're talking about.
There's got to be a balance.
It's like, I like doing this, but I kind of like a little reciprocation. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's that kind of the attitude, and it's the not having the self-awareness to understand even that's what you're doing. Like you're ready to just receive, because again, it's a very narcissistic, self-centered type attitude to have.
But I think a lot of it can stem back from your previous life leading up to the relationship you're in now. Whether it's a friend.
Are we talking about reincarnation now? What the fuck, man?
No, meaning that in your prior years of relationships or even a marriage or friendships with other people, if your behavior wasn't, resonating with others the same way as it now it's reflecting, upon your current situation.
Yeah.
So when you have that sort of thing, again, it falls back to the people you have in your life. So the early signs for me that I've at least pointed out is when I'm going out and doing things with that individual, my senses are heightened a little bit more. So I kind of pay a little bit more attention to the people around me and how they act or how they conduct themselves. Yeah. So when I do that, I make better choices as far as who I let in my life. And that's where I think a lot of it is age and just a lot of life experiences. And you tend to keep that circle of people in your life a lot smaller.
Alrighty, so we're going to move on to the next one. That is excellent so far. Number 4, this person is always right. Always right. They never make a mistake. They never admit fault. They never take responsibility for their actions.
I've been right about this whole segment, so we can move on.
All right, let's move on to number 5. Wait a minute. Yeah, I don't know that one needs a whole lot of explanation. I think we've all experienced people in our lives that are just constant. They're always right about everything. Like, even if it just comes down to, there's not really a right or wrong. There's just a need for a negotiation in a situation. There still will sit there and
But there's got to be some humility for taking responsibility for being wrong about something.
That's hard for people to do, man. So to sit there and say, you know what, I messed up. I'm sorry. I won't happen again. And actually mean it. That's another whole nother step in your growth that people don't see. Apologize, do it again. Apologize, do it again. Okay, we know where this is going. Apologize some more, do it again. Dude, your apologies don't mean nothing. That's a whole nother topic.
Whole nother show.
All right, so number 5, they're dishonest. They have a constant need to lie, to invent stories to fit their narrative. For more on this, see the let's see, what's her name? Maddow? Yeah, see Rachel Maddow in the Russian investigation. You'll understand exactly what I'm talking about over the last 2 years. And anyway, they need to protect the narrative, and the need to protect the narrative justifies their behaviors.
Right.
So they're willing to do some pretty underhanded shit, maybe some slightly less than honest things, because they have a narrative that they have to keep intact in their mind. Their own self-esteem can't handle a strike to the narrative.
So how would you pick up on that early on in a relationship, whether it's from being in a marriage or friendships?
Oh, I mean, it could be anything. It could be just like little white lies over silly shit that you might notice, like that make no sense. Like, why are you lying about that? That makes absolutely
why do people do a lot of dumb shit that they do?
Yeah, why would I be offended by that? Like, it's just little things that happen. It's the way they maybe you'll hear them talking on the phone with somebody else, and they're constantly going. They'll say something that damn well is a lie. Yeah. But they're just doing it to try to spare the other person's feelings, or they're doing it to try to manipulate that person into getting something out of them. I mean, it may not even be conscious behavior, but it's just you kind of notice these little things, and you're like, well, this person doesn't really seem to have the integrity to be honest. And even if it seems like they're telling the truth to you all the time, you don't know that because you hear how they treat everybody else.
Right. You
don't know when they're lying to you. You can't tell. So you got to be really hyper aware of it and be willing to call it out. Like, hey. You just said that. Why not just tell them the truth? Why, and then see what their answer is from there.
And for God's sakes, don't do it in a public forum. I hate when people do that.
Oh, Jesus. Stay off Facebook with that
one. Just go
Christ.
take it behind the scenes and deal with that person or that individual when they've lied to you, and have a discussion about it and figure out where they came from it. Because sometimes you don't realize that people might have an actual problem with lying, and because they believe so much of what they tell, they don't think that they have a problem. You need to address it, but don't do it on a public forum.
All right, I'll tell you what. Probably the best thing to do would be to go to the Art of Charm episode 748 and see the rest of what their list of 7 is. We're actually running up against our 8 o'clock time.
Yep.
So we'll leave some tips for them to give. It's actually a very, very well done episode. There's a whole nother section of that show, that same episode, that explains how to be a high value person. How to avoid being that toxic person, and it's very valuable. So I would definitely recommend checking it out. Again, that's Art of Charm, episode 748. So before we move on with the last section of the show, our favorite section of the show, the Phobismus, we should probably pull another crayon. And while you're pulling that crayon, I'm going to read this comment by, let's see, Dan says, that's why you need a couple friends to tell you tell your friend your gal isn't giving, and it's hurting the relationship, knowing he will tell his gal, and then she'll tell your gal. Oh, my God. Hold on. So Alexa says, if someone will lie about something as stupid as going to Target when they said they went to Walmart, they'll lie about anything. That's absolutely true.
Oh, yeah.
And some people, not all, lie as so much that they believe their own lies, and then it's become truth to them. Yeah, absolutely. It's that story that they've got in their head, that narrative that's in their head that they have to maintain because their ego can't handle a hit to that.
And that's what I said. A good friend will go behind the scenes and call you out on it, or not really call you out. That's a little harsh, but maybe sit you down and talk to you and say, hey, I don't think you realize you're doing X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. So
I need to bring this to your attention. And because of that, you got to have that white privilege.
that's the color.
That's the color.
That's the color. White privilege.
I'm privileged.
So we've got statutory grape, and we've got
white privilege.
White privilege to work with, ladies and gentlemen. And we're going to do our Phobismus section to wrap up the show. And as we wrap up, we'll pull the third color for you guys to draw a picture it with, and then we'll list them all at the end. And, so we're going to go into the Phobismus section. Now, here's what I wanted to ask you. I wanted to ask you, as far as this section, do you want to talk about, do we want to educate people what's offensive about an 11-year-old being arrested for not standing up for the Pledge of Allegiance, or a bowl of fruit?
Let's do a bowl of fruit.
A bowl of fruit it is.
Yeah.
All right.
Intro.
As far as that other story, go type that up and look at it. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
At any rate, here we go. Oh, that was awkward.
Phobismus.
Phobismus.
already. So we've got the Phobismus section of the show. Here we go. The Phobismus section of the show is where we tell you guys how to be offended by anything. It is a combination of phobe, ism, and ist. And we are your professionals this evening to tell you why you should be offended by this bowl of fruit. This bowl of fruit is a very offensive bowl of fruit.
I'm offended because more likely when they took this photo, all this shit was plastic and wasn't real.
Well, that could be offensive. But I'm talking about a real issue in today's world where we want to divide everybody by skin color and race and religion.
Yeah.
And the left specifically seems to want to make everybody, they seem to insist that everybody is the same. There's no such thing as race. There's no such thing as all these
equality,
different,
man.
Yeah, we need equality in this bowl of fruit. And I'm not sensing an overabundance of equality in this bowl of fruit.
That's a pretty diverse group of fruit.
I mean, first of all,
I like diversity.
This is what needs to be
character.
done. I mean, this is the communist way. This is what needs to be done. We need to make all these pieces of fruit look exactly the same. We need to make sure that we take the grapes and we take the oranges and we take the strawberries and we make them all circular in shape. I think that would be the most easy.
Make them look like a banana.
Yeah, we need to take the bananas too and roll them into a little ball. Like everything needs to.
I just want to do the minions. Banana.
Banana. Yeah, everything needs to be uniform, the same. We probably need to go ahead and paint everything. Now, I'm not sure what you do about the different sizes of things, except maybe you take a large ball of grapes and you make.
So how do we identify gender?
A ball of grapes the same size as a balled up banana? Yeah, but then you got to paint everything the same color.
Same color.
Yeah, we got to redistribute the colors.
All guys, all girls?
You know what, matter of fact, what I'm thinking, the best way to do that, the best way
Gender
to make
neutral?
everybody equal in this, and this is the ultimate 1-2 punch of phobismus strategy. You take the whole fucking bowl of fruit and you throw it in a blender and you hit the on button. Problem solved.
Yep.
That's communism for you folks. All right.
Or socialism, whatever.
I hear you. So you guys have been watching the Unframe of Mind show where we have uncomfortable conversations without a condom. And I'm going to wrap up the show while Mr. Anthony here allows me to pull another crayon out of the box. So if you guys want to be a guest on the show, head on over to unframeofmind.com and go ahead and click the link and let us know what you want to talk about. We do a number of guest interviews. We write articles. We do blog posts. We do videos, podcasts. You know, basically anywhere you want to find us, we're out there.
And if you want to have us both on or individually, get in touch with us.
Absolutely.
We can do that as well. Also, too, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube channel and
yes, for the love of God, subscribe on YouTube. I think we're like 5 or 6 subscribers away from that 500 follower mark. For the love of God.
And we're still currently working on Spotify, getting the podcast on there as well.
It's so frustrating, but yeah, it's all work in progress. Anyway, so we got the last color of tonight is Insufferable Vegan Green. There you go, folks. Check it out. Here's your colors. Here is your challenge for the coloring contest. Submit your art to unframeofmind@gmail.com, and you will use these colors. Insufferable Vegan Green, Statutory Grape, and White Privilege.
What the fuck do you even... What do you do with that?
I can't wait to see what y'all come up with.
I tell you what. You know what we ought to do?
I'm shutting the stream off.
Next week.